Welcome everybody to this week's podcast. And I am delighted to have a guest with me today, Lou Barnes, who is a dyslexia expert. I'm going to let Lou introduce herself actually in just a second, but I've asked her to come on because we met in a like a networking group, really, didn't we? And I just love what Lou does for her clients. So, Lou, do you want to tell us who you are? I feel like I want to go into Cilla Black. Tell us a little bit who you are, where you come from.
Lovely, why not? Hi, Nikki. Thanks for having me. It's lovely to be here. Okay, let me tell you who I am. I am, as you said, Lou Barnes, and I support parents and children who have dyslexia and other special needs because often I find my students with dyslexia also have ADHD or PDA or something else, and that's absolutely fine. Um, if I give you the really quickest version I can, I used to be a primary school teacher. I loved it, but I left after around 20 years because I realised every year there were amazingly clever, bright, articulate, creative children in my class who just couldn't get to grips with reading and writing. And it wasn't good enough. And I felt that what we were doing, all the extra help we were giving them, just wasn't having the impact they deserved. So fast forward, I left teaching in a fit of madness, probably, determined to find a new solution. I have a solution which is an outside the box way of dealing with dyslexia. And I've been working with parents and their children for the last 16 years with very good results, I have to say. So, yeah, my mission now is to get that into schools and share it with people so more children can get the help they need.
Oh, I love that so much. And I often see your posts on LinkedIn because we obviously follow each other. And what I find incredible is um, how unaware I think sometimes we can be about the symptoms of dyslexia. And you said PDA. What does that mean?
PDA is pathological demand avoidance.
Oh.
I'm finding more and more that the children I work with are struggling with high anxiety
Hmm.
and things like that. You know, we could spend another goodness knows how long
Yeah.
to that. Won't go there now.
Yeah.
So when a child doesn't like to be asked to do anything and they can have meltdowns. So
Oh, interesting.
something as simple as brushing their teeth or picking something up,
Mm-hmm.
and often at school. And what it is their nervous system is so very dysregulated that they are terrified and it is totally uncomfortable for them to fail.
Wow.
So to avoid failure, they get into the habit of refusing to do what they're asked because then they can't fail. So it
Yeah.
causes really bad behavior or rude children. But actually, there is, as always, a very good reason why they are behaving as they do.
That's fascinating.
With a lot of that, especially when they haven't been able to read or write because of the dyslexia, and it has caused such pain for them. So it's quite.
Yeah. Wow, that's interesting. And I never script my podcast, but I the only question that I had for you was what are the common symptoms of dyslexia? And then I'd also like to hear about the uncommon symptoms because I think a lot of parents will be listening. This is a podcast for working mums. And so as a mum, how can what symptoms or like common or uncommon symptoms are we looking for in their children so that we can either support them ourselves or come to you for that extra support?
I love that question. Thank you so much for that because a lot of what I do is trying to raise even, let's try that
Yeah.
again, raise awareness because there are so many different ways dyslexia can present. So if we answer your first part to start
Yeah.
with, so the most common symptoms are children struggling to remember words that you think they've learned when they're very young.
Oh, okay.
To start with, it can be they seem to know something and then they don't, or they'll read it 1 minute and then on the next page they can't read it. And we can talk about why that happens later if you like. But that's one thing, like, whereas you'd expect to learn it and hold on to it, it doesn't happen. also not wanting to read, but not just because they're not big readers, because not everybody needs to love reading. It's not for everyone. Thankfully, we're all different. But if you find they are doing anything and everything to get out of reading, or they're becoming upset when they're asked to read, or it becomes a battle, or they're absolutely exhausted at the idea of it, that's really common.
Oh, okay.
This is where often children can get branded as naughty or lazy,
Mm.
but they're not. It's not they won't do it, they can't do it. Um, Other things is not being at when they write things down, maybe missing out words or sort of it doesn't make sense what they're writing. Um,
Okay.
and I think maybe the last one is that they're fine at school when they're doing the very basic learning, when there's only one sound to each letter. But then when they get onto combinations of letters and different ways to make vowels,
Yeah.
that makes sense. Stop me if I need to fill in information.
Yeah, I will. Yeah, I will.
I can sort of talk jargon and it may not make sense to everyone else. Um, that they get very confused when there's more than one letter going together or more than one way to make a sound or to read as a combination of letters.
Yeah, interesting. So how can we, so I suppose as a parent, looking out for those more common symptoms. And is there a spectrum for people?
Definitely,
Yeah.
definitely a spectrum. That's another really good question. So yeah, they're the common ones,
Yeah.
but you get one child who literally cannot put together a three-letter word. And then you might get another child who appears, and then we'll go on to the uncommon ones in a sec if you like, who appears to be able to read, but then can't spell, or
Yeah.
appears to be able to read, but then can't answer any questions about what they've just read. So there's
Yeah.
a spectrum, and some children can read really well but can't spell. Some can spell, but they struggle with reading. So there's massive differences between.
Yeah. And it's interesting, you won't know this, but one of the reasons I think, and I might get emotional, that I'm so fascinated about what you do is because without question, I am undiagnosed dyslexia. And it's not the I don't resonate with the words jumbling around or letters jumbling around. That was never the case. But even now as an adult, I could read a really engaging passage and then someone say to me, "What was that about then?" And I could not tell you. So this is where looking out for the remembering something 1 minute and not the next. I could spell. Reading's not so much a problem, but when you were saying about spelling, I could spell a word right 1 minute and then a minute later, I would not have a clue how to spell that name, that word. So it's so fascinating hearing you talking through the symptoms. I'm like, it just kind of says to me, of course, that makes sense in my brain because that's what I've always experienced. Only like we're talking like 20, 30 years ago that I was at school and it just wasn't, we weren't aware of all these differences then. Sometimes I'm quite glad about that because I wouldn't have wanted to have a label, but I also think I always felt stupid at school because I could never prove my intelligence. I couldn't prove, like, I couldn't take, even now as an adult, I can't take an exam and flourish in an exam if it's written. It's just not how my brain has ever worked. Verbally, I would excel and get top grades and have done as an adult when it's been like verbal, but written, my brain just shuts right down. So this is also why I just find the topic so fascinating is because it resonates with me. And actually, when you were talking there about not wanting to read, I can see that in my youngest son as well. He used to get really antsy, but I would never have said that he was dyslexic because he's so very switched on in other areas. And he seems to be doing quite well, but I think the avoidance and he might be avoiding because he finds that writing difficult.
Oh,
So fascinating. So tell us some of the uncommon symptoms then.
okay, and it's great that you've shared that and relate to it. I come across a lot of adults who are in a similar position,
Mm. Yeah.
and I'm glad now there's more conversation around it.
Yeah.
Great that you can share that. Thank
Yeah.
you.
Thank you.
So the uncommon ones, one of the ones that it's common to me, but it's not recognized. It's just exactly what you've said, where you could read a passage probably out loud beautifully. So everyone says, oh, they can read.
Yeah.
But there's absolute, I call it storage cupboard. So what I believe is happening in this case is you're reading it, so it's not moving, blurring, jumping. That's what I call the distortion issue, also called visual stress. But when it goes in, your very brilliant brain, and it is brilliant because you've got all these other skills, and my students are the most creative, articulate, amazing humans. It's
Oh.
taking this wonderful route round the brain, but the problem is it's not taking the route that goes to the storage cupboard.
Mm,
There's nowhere to put the information.
interesting.
Thing is, that's great, but then how do you know what you've read if the information's not stored anywhere? And also for spelling, because to spell, you need to see what the word looks like. You need to, if you like, take a photograph, make a mental image of it, and then you need to store it in that storage cupboard so that when you need to write it again, you go, oh, there it is from the storage cupboard. I've got that. Well, if you don't have a cupboard to put it in, it's a bit like if you go shop, imagine going shopping. You put all that time and energy into making the list and going around the supermarket and paying for it. And you come home and there's no cupboards and there's no fridge and there's nowhere, no freezer in your kitchen. So you have to throw the stuff away because there's nowhere to keep it. And then later when you go to make dinner, you've got nothing. Oh, got to go to the shops again, start again. It's a bit like that.
That is so interesting. And then what I find is that people, if I say, how do you spell that word, which is and I find this with text,
Mm.
predictive text can't work out what I want to say. So then I have to try and pick another word, but it's not the word that I want to say because
Yeah,
so that happens to me all the time. But then I'll say to someone like if I'm feeling particularly confident, how do you spell? And it will be quite a like everyday word, and they will try and sound it out to me. I'm like, no, no, no. I need to know the letters because I can't.
can't picture it.
I don't know what. Yeah, I don't know what word is associated with that sound because it hadn't gone into my storage cupboard. So that's such a relief almost to hear. And I would imagine for parents, if their children are struggling, it's like, oh, that makes so much sense.
And that's the point, you see, because especially that so many of my students are, as I said, creative, intelligent, so articulate. I mean, their brains do things I can't even imagine. It's amazing for me to hear how they express themselves and what their brains can imagine. I've got one child I'm working with. He was seeing all the letters in 3D and then they were
Wow.
rotating. Now, I'd love to be able to imagine something in 3D and look all around it. My brain doesn't.
Yeah,
Now, that's great for some things. It's not great for reading and writing.
yeah.
They are amazing brains. So it's really hard to understand why they can't do a simple thing. But of course, it's not simple if your brain is not using the neural pathway. And I don't know if I've already said it. I think I did, but can't remember. Reading and
There
writing
again, it's fine.
is natural human behavior. So it's not like speaking, which is natural human behavior. Reading and writing are man-made constructs. They're not natural behavior.
Oh my
So
God.
we assume everyone's I'm doing this a lot, aren't I? I do.
It's good. I love it. Use your hands.
Oh,
The people listening in their car won't be able to see your hands. It's fine.
emotions with my hands for those who don't have the
Yeah,
video.
yeah, yeah, exactly.
They we all assume that everyone's using the same process and all our brains work in the same way. But if that brilliant creative brain, which thinks in a different way, which is what makes it so amazing, is using its own neural pathway, its own map of reading and writing, but that map hasn't got key elements like a storage cupboard, then of course it's going to be almost impossible for that person. So, yeah, it's amazing and fascinating how different our brains are. But parents, teachers, I certainly didn't realize as a teacher, it's very hard for us to comprehend because we all assume everyone works the same way we do.
Yeah. Which is exactly the same with my management. We all think that everyone's thinking the way we're thinking. We all think that people are having got the same values, the same expectations, the same, and they don't. So that absolutely resonates with me. So how does it work then? If you've got a child, so now I'm thinking of my son. If you've got a child who is clearly incredible, like Blue will be able to create a 3D object out of paper. I mean, it was a gun, which I would prefer him not to have particularly made that type of weapon. But anyway, he's a boy, so we're going with it. But he could make the trigger, he could make it was even all the moving parts, and he just did that out of not just he had a thought and he just knew what to do. So, how then, if our schooling is so very much written and reading based, how is a child like him going to be able to show his intelligence and explode in the best way possible without being held back by the writing and the reading?
I wish I had a better answer than I'm going to give you, and
Yeah,
that this is the truth. Unless they are the kind of child that can push through by working exceedingly hard without getting burnt out, it's
right.
really, really tough because, as you said, every single element of the blooming curriculum is
Yeah,
on. Can you read and write about it?
yeah,
And it's wrong. And I wish it wasn't that way, but currently it is.
yeah. Even the engineering and the design and technology, they're like, no, you have to be able to write about it first, and it
Exactly.
doesn't make
And
sense.
it's insane because, why can't we get children to mind map their ideas or draw
Yeah,
cartoons? Or he could probably show brilliantly with diagrams how he was going to do it.
yeah.
I'm hoping it's going to change, but at the moment there is such a huge bias. I mean, we're still living in Victorian times,
I
really,
know. Yeah.
as far as education goes. And when it comes to tests, I think now there's slightly more emphasis on coursework, but not on all exam boards. Sadly, my best advice to people is if you think there's a problem, get help as soon as possible
Mm.
because much as it needs to change and the conversation around it is growing, thank goodness,
Yeah.
I don't see a change happening that quickly. And I wish that wasn't my answer.
Yeah, I know. I know. But that's why we need to come to you, isn't it? So before we talk about what you actually do, tell us some of the other uncommon symptoms, if there are any.
We did looking like you can read, but not being able to remember everything you've read. That's a really big one because those children slip through the net.
Yeah.
They could make that it's working for them. Um, Other uncommon symptoms. Well, I don't know if it's uncommon, but one that isn't always picked up is when they're just exhausted after school,
Oh,
totally
okay.
exhausted or stressed, like struggling to have a conversation or communicate.
Interesting.
Now, I know a lot of people would say, well, that's social media. They all go and shut themselves in their bedrooms and whatever.
Hmm.
I think it's one to watch for because, going to school is hard enough for anybody. There's
Yeah.
so much information we try and cram into brains in such a short amount of time. But for a child with dyslexia, they are working 10, 20, 30 times harder than anyone else
Hmm. Interesting.
up. So they are wiped by the end,
Yeah.
and that can show up. Um, yeah, I'm trying to think of other uncommon symptoms. They're so different. That's the thing.
Yeah, and that's the thing because parts of our brain are all exactly the same, and then the other parts are just so vastly different. So that's no, I think what you said already is just really good. So, if a parent is noticing these symptoms in their child, what is it that you can do to help them, and how do you do that?
So the way I work is different to other people.
Mm.
Um, and I'm constantly evolving and learning from my amazing students, which keeps it really interesting. But there is a process I use that people have called magic. It's not magic. Our brains are magic because of neuroplasticity or the brain's ability to learn new things. So the first thing I do, and it doesn't matter if my child is 6 or I'm working with an adult who's 60, because I work with adults too, which is always good fun.
Yeah.
The first thing I do is find out what their brilliant brain is doing when it's faced with a page of text. But we don't look at words or letters to start with.
Oh, okay.
The way I do that is I get them to imagine a creature. Now they get to choose the creature, and it can be made up, it can be fantasy, it could be real, it doesn't matter. And I ask them a series of questions about this creature. So I need to find out if it's still, where it is, if there's one or more than one, if they can see it all clearly. They're the four, and what size it is. Now, the point of this is to read and write, we need to imagine, because as I said earlier, we need to have our own mental image of the word in order to store it, right?
Mm.
To link it to a sound. So to read and write, you need to be able to see letters and words still and clear and on their own, because some people see multiple of each letter or word. And they need to be the right size, because some brains make the words too big and some make them too small, so they can't be seen properly. Now, say we're playing with a cat, the child's chosen, I don't know, it'd probably be a pink cat with purple stripes or something.
Wouldn't we all want one of those?
Horn. I mean, we have all kinds of things. And to start with, I need to know where the cat is. Because for some children, the writing, the letters, and the words, or just mental images, if there's sometimes trauma involved, their brain doesn't want to look at pictures at all. So their creature could start off in the jungle if that's where their imaginary cat comes from. But then as we try and bring it closer to them, it might always be in another room or behind them or in a cupboard and always hidden. And that tells me their brain isn't looking properly. It can't see the mental images. So we have to make it clear for them. So we play with the creature to make it safe, to make it comfortable. We use magic ideas and spells and whatever they like to do. So we have to have that creature in front of them. That calms it. Oh, I can look at my imaginary pictures in front of me. Brilliant. We have to keep it still. So we play with the imaginary cat with the unicorn horn or whatever until it's still. And we go through these questions and we manipulate their mental image until it's clear, still, stable, and the right size and comfortable and safe to look at.
Wow.
Once we've done that, we've already created a new neural pathway in the brain.
Mm.
Because they can recall their creature because they can imagine it again. So the storage cupboard's open too. And that's all. And once we've done that, and this, how long it takes varies. So for some children, we can do that in an hour.
Mm.
They're like, oh, yeah, great. Oh, fab. Others might take me 11 or 12, 30-minute sessions because every
Mm.
brain is different, but it doesn't matter.
Yeah. Yeah.
It can be done. Once that's done, it's really easy to do some bridging activities to then use that same new idea the brain's got with letters and words. And then I put my teacher hat on, and then I can teach them about the way letters correlate to sounds, and we can teach them how to use the visual part of their brain to remember what they've read and strengthen that bit of the brain, that new pathway. And everything else just sort of falls into place after that with the right.
Wow.
And I teach them to their strengths. So if I've got a very kinesthetic child, we'll dance and we'll act. And if it's a child who's very creative, we might do more drawing or some love online games, especially my ADHD children. It's got to be fast quizzes with bonus rounds and timers. So then we adapt.
It's amazing. And it isn't it it just I find it so incredible. Here's just more evidence at how so brilliant our brains are when we're very deliberate and conscious about how we use them and how we can retrain ourselves to be slightly different.
Absolutely. Our brains are fascinating, incredible. I mean, I'm just beginning to learn about them, I feel.
Yeah. Yeah. So
Amazing.
amazing. So, we will put your all your information in the show notes. So if people want to start following you, connecting with you, have a chat with you, they can find you and do so. But is there anything that we haven't talked about yet, Lou, that you feel is relevant?
I think something that I again like to try and raise awareness of, and your followers will probably already be very aware of this, is the fact that dyslexia doesn't just affect children, it
Yeah.
affects whole families. And actually, as part of my work with, assuming it's children, not adults, with the children, it's to make sure that I inform the parents what's happening and sort of be a support for them, because a lot of the parents that come to me are desperate and they're exhausted and they've tried so many different things, and often they feel school is brushing them off, saying, oh no, they're fine, they'll be fine later. But as a parent, you know you're the expert on your child. So I do think it's really important for anybody working with children to listen to the parents and to be a team. I might be an expert in what I do, but I'm not the expert on your child. You
Mm.
are. So we need to work as a team and listen together. And it's okay for parents to feel exhausted by it and lose patience and get frustrated sometimes because you have a breaking point too.
I think especially when you can see the brilliance in your child. Like it if it doesn't quite make sense because you can see how amazing and brilliant your creative and incredible your child is. I think their frustration can be even more so sometimes.
I'm sure it must be. And parents say, but when they're interested, they can do it, or they can read the labels on the Minecraft game. And I say, yeah, but they've correlated that action makes that shape. The word looks that shape. They're not looking at inside the word, because these brilliant, creative, amazing kids, they will be the same, have these amazing strategies,
Yeah.
take even more brain power and are even more clever, but just aren't the most efficient way to do it.
Yeah.
It must be very, very hard. But
Yeah.
it's a lot of parents feel guilty, and it's not your fault, honestly. It
Yeah.
really isn't.
And I do also believe this is going into the whole neurodiversity bit, which is not where my expertise lie at all. But I did do a Google search, and dyslexia comes under the neurodiversity banner. And a quarter, I think at this point, 25% of the population have a neurodivergent diagnosis. And I can't help but think that is by human design. Like, if you think back in our caveman days, we needed visionaries, we needed creators, we needed like those people that wanted to go out and explore and come up with new inventions. Like, that's how we evolved because their brain was that way.
Absolutely.
And so I just think we need brains like that because otherwise we wouldn't move forward.
Oh, I totally agree with you. And I always say to my students, your brain thinks differently. It's not wrong. It's
No.
different. It's brilliant. It does things I can't even imagine, and we need your brain. So I always say I to people, because I've been accused before of people saying to me, "Oh, you say you can cure dyslexia using your NLP process. That's not possible." The truth is, no, I can't cure dyslexia, and I don't want to. My goodness, we need these brains. What I can do is make just the teeny tiny reading and writing bit easier.
Yeah.
It won't change anything else. We definitely don't want to do that. And you're right, evolution means we need lots of different brains, don't we?
100%.
Let's
100%. Yeah, exactly. It's a huge celebration. I agree. So where is the best place for people to come and find you if they want to learn more from you, Lou?
The best place at the moment is my website, which is www.unlock-learning.co.uk, or LinkedIn, and you'll find me as Lou Barnes on LinkedIn. But you
Yeah.
can link to LinkedIn through the website. You can pretty much access everything on the website. And I do have a blog people might find interesting, also linked to the website. And also, I've just opened up, last week was Neurodiversity Week. So, to celebrate that, we got a learning resource room where people can find videos and other
Oh, brilliant.
I've done and some free resources. And that's all on the website too.
Fantastic. Oh, I'll go and take a look, mostly for my
Oh, yeah,
for my learning about me and my brain.
great. And I do train people as well. I've got a few courses running. So there's Unlock Learning Foundations for anyone that wants to work with their child, where I'll
Oh,
train you to do what I do with your own child.
that's brilliant. Oh, I love that. I love that so much. So we will put all those links in the show notes, like I said. And it is interesting because I love the little character drawing. Like you do cartoon posts sometimes, don't you? Which I just love. The blogs aren't for my like personally aren't because I'm like I see the words, I'm like, oh, that's a lot of words.
And so the podcasts, I've done about 4 or 5 podcasts, and some of them were for um, sort of SEN
Yep.
things. So they go into a lot more detail and explain things. So I
Yeah.
hope
So I would,
for you.
yeah, I will definitely navigate to the videos rather than the words. But it's incredible that that's out there for people, isn't it? I just love it so much. And I love, love, love what you do. Thank you so, so much for coming and speaking with me today. Like I said, we will put all of Lou's details in the notes below. So go and follow her on LinkedIn, go and check out her website because I think you're incredible. So thank you very much for joining me today.
Thank you so much. It's been lovely to talk to you.
Good. And listeners, I'll see you all next week. Mwah.